Kate was just getting home from a visit to her boyfriend's house out of town, relieved to finally be home. She put down her bags as she took her apartment key out of her purse and slowly inserted it into the lock. As she turned the key, and subsequently the knob, she began to hear popular music, faintly, but clearly. She gathered her bags quickly and began walking into the apartment. It seemed that with every step she took the music grew louder, almost stronger. She turned left into the hallway, branching off the living room, and saw that her roommate's door was closed. She knocked several times, hoping to provoke some sort of response, but all she heard was the music, throbbing, behind the door. She shrugged and slowly walked into her room at the end of the hall and got everything situated as it was before she had left to see Steve, her boyfriend of 2 years. As she put things in their place, she hummed and thought back. Not just on the last week spent with Steve, but the 2 years before it. How well their relationship was progressing, and how happy she was to be with such a great guy. She finished putting everything away, and as her mind started descending back to earth, she began to hear that throbbing, pounding music again. She looked at the clock. It read 11 in the morning. She had been there for an hour already putting things away, and yet her roommate still had not even left her room. She began to grow concerned and walked slowly, but nervously, to her roommate's room. She reached for the doorknob, turned it, and slowly pushed the door open. Jen, her roommate, was always a tomboy. Always hanging out with boys. Watching sports with them. Drinking beer. And she just recently started smoking cigarettes. Jen had never been what Kate would consider a proper girl. The two were still what you could consider friends. At least. In the way that two girls who don't fight usually are. Kate had met Jen when she moved in-state for college. Jen was originally from Ohio. Jen had needed a place to stay, since her on-campus living arrangements had fallen through. She had always said that she was going to go to school to be a vet, since she loved animals. She was doing really well at school until just recently. The night, as Kate knew it, even took a toll on her. Jen had just turned 21, and her parents were in town to help celebrate. Jen always noted that as she walked into the establishment, she saw a motorbike outside that she really liked. After they had finished eating, Jen had passed her, they walked outside. Instead of seeing her parents walk to their car, she saw them begin to walk towards the motorcycle. Needless to say, she was confused. As she reached the motorcycle, her parents began to say that it was hers. She was ecstatic. She had always wanted one, and now she had one. She jumped up and down, and gave each of her parents a huge hug and a wet kiss. She then remembered that there was a basketball game on at 8, both she and her dad wanted to see it, so she asked if they would like to meet back at her place. They said yes, and so she got on the motorcycle. Turned right out of the parking lot. And drove through a stoplight. She noted that it turned yellow just as she passed through. So it would probably turn red for her parents. It did, and her parents stopped at the light. After Jen reached her apartment complex, she went inside, and climbed up the stairs that led to the second floor. She slowly trudged to apartment 7, and walked in. She saw her roommate, Kate, making popcorn. Kate said something about how everything is better if you watch it with popcorn. Jen never really knew how to handle Kate's overbearing motherly nature. As Jen sat down, she turned on the game, and began to watch, starting to wonder where her parents were. 5 minutes passed, and Kate walked over with a bowl of popcorn and set it down. She then began to play with Jen's hair a bit. Kate always talked about how wonderful Jen's hair was. It was shoulder length, slightly curly, and dark brown. Jen swatted away Kate's hands, unable to handle any stimulation, due to her increasing nervousness about her parents. Jen said she was worried about them, and that she was going to drive over and find out what was going on. As Jen left, she had a hollow feeling in her stomach. She knew something terrible had happened. She didn't even take notice of the sirens until she saw the ambulance and police cars, sitting in the middle of the intersection, near a dark black car. She slowly began to walk towards it. After parking her bike, immediately blocking out anything else around her. When she got closer, she began to realize that it was her parents' car. She saw the two mangled. She couldn't handle anymore. She already knew what had happened. She whirled around and saw the slime that had hit her parents and his truck through her blurred, teary vision. She began to stalk over to him, feeling more hate for this man than she had ever felt in her life. As Jen walked up to him, fist clenched, ready to hit him, a police officer saw her and restrained her. The police officer began to ask what Jen was doing there, who she was, what her name was. It felt like 50 questions asked at once. She had no clue what was going on, so she said what she could through her tears and sobs. The police officer must have decoded enough that he knew who she was. He embraced her and told her he was sorry. He helped her to the front seat of his car and drove her home. If you could ask Kate what she felt when she opened the door to her roommate's room, the surprise would be low on the list. Those high on the list, however, would be disgust and annoyance, to say the least. She opened that door to see Jen lying on the floor of her room. Sprawled over two men, dressed only in their boxers, buried in beer cans and bottles. Kate slowly picked up two pairs of jeans that she identified as the men's and tossed them to the pigs. They were awake and slowly doing unspeakable things to Jen. Kate screamed at them to get out of the house. The two men had moved faster than anything Kate had ever seen. They had their pants on in 2 seconds and they ran out of the house before Kate could even figure out what was going on. Kate slowly walked over to Jen to assess the damage. She was lying there, sprawled across the ground, half naked, wearing only a pair of boxers and a single sock. Kate took notice of several $20 bills sticking out of the waistband of the boxers. Kate walked around the room, looking for a shirt. She found one, luckily, right under Jen. Kate had to lift Jen to get the shirt and surprisingly, she was very light. She pulled the shirt on over Jen. She couldn't help but think how helpless Jen looked. After she had the shirt on Jen, she slowly shook her awake. Jen said one word, bathroom. Kate helped her up, as she stumbled across the hall into the bathroom and closed the door. T sounded as though Jen made it. Which was good. Kate didn't want to have to clean more messes than she already had to. Kate quickly located the stereo and turned it off. She could hear the birds outside, and it was peaceful. Until the sound was interrupted by Jen throwing up into the toilet. Jen heaved as she drew herself off the cold, hard floor in the bathroom. Facing the toilet, yet again. To throw up some more. Afterwards, dropping to the floor again. She wasn't sure why she drank so much all the time, it only led to more problems. She then remembered how good it felt to feel nothing at all. After about an hour, she felt herself getting better. At least good enough to realize that she dropped about $60 out of her boxers. She always wore boxers, it was her little way of rebelling against her own gender. She always hated girls. They were always whining about how bad everything is. And always getting giddy about boys and things like that. Not to mention the whole sugar and spice thing. Never really resonated with her. This didn't mean she had any problem exploiting her gender. She loved exploiting the gullible fools that boys tend to be. While she was thinking about all of this, she was standing up, working her way over to the shower. She got in and turned the water up to the medium level that she thought was so relaxing. As she washed her hair, she heard something fall in the kitchen. She thought it was just Kate being clumsy and dropping things again. She spent about 6 minutes in the shower. She could never stand being in there for very long. As she dried off and stepped into the hall wearing her towel, she saw Kate pacing around the living room on the phone. Probably with her boyfriend. Jen couldn't stand that guy. Something about him always irritated her. She walked into her room and stood in front of the mirror admiring the shape of her body. She is 22 years old, even though everyone always guesses she's 16 or 17 due to how young she looks. As she got dressed, she slipped on a pair of boxers, a pair of jeans, a bra, and a white tank top, as well as socks. She was walking towards the door to put her shoes on. Oh, she could go watch the football game with her friend Mark. When she noticed something. A whimper. As she walked past the couch, she saw Kate lying on her back. She was staring at the ceiling with her eyes red and puffy, tears streaming down her face, and her lip was quivering. It was obvious to Jen that Kate was depressed about something, but she just kept walking towards the door and put her boots on. As she closed the door, she said, "I'll be home around 9. As the door closed, Kate lay on the couch, crying. She was wondering why he would do this to her. She thought they had something special, they were going to last forever. How could there be another girl in his life? She did not get it. She had just seen him. She had just gotten back from a trip to his house for a week. Then she remembered. That time he went to check on the boat. He was gone for nearly 4 hours. She couldn't stand it anymore. She let out a sob. He realized it was useless being caught up on a boy she had lost. So she headed into her room and closed the door. Jen seemed to be laughing hysterically at the grown man on screen crying. Because his wife had just died. Mark said, "You're just cold sometimes, Jen." She replied, "I don't care. Why should a grown man be crying? I haven't cried since I just don't cry. So why should he?" Mark retorted, "It's a bit different when a girl cries, and when a guy cries." "Oh? It is? I thought the only difference was that guys were actually emotionally stable. And didn't need to cry to vent any particular emotion," Jen said without batting an eye. Mark noted as he nodded at the clock. "You know, it's pretty late. You should probably be getting home." Jen spun around on the bar stool Mark had in his kitchen and suddenly remembered Kate. Crap. When did it get to be 1 a.m.? She exclaimed as she ran out of the house, grabbing her motorcycle helmet off the ground on the way out. What Jen returned to was far from what she left. She pulled into the driveway to see a few of Kate's friends loading a large trailer, which was hooked up to Kate's van. She took off her helmet as she stepped off her bike, and walked into the building, saying hi to anyone she happened to see on the way up to apartment 7. When she walked in, she saw the entire apartment bare. She remembered that today was the day the lease was up. She was confused, as was obviously visible on her face. She found Kate in the corner of the living room, helping direct her friends. Jen asked what was going on, and Kate said, almost too coolly, "I can't stand to be in the same state as that idiot. So I'm moving into your old house. The one you grew up in. I spoke to your aunt. She was doing a good job taking care of the place. And she said we could stay there as long as we want. You can come too if you follow a few conditions." Kate was almost a completely different person than the warm motherly figure that Jen had known since she had moved in. She could sense the wall that Kate was building around her, and for some reason, she cared. "Why, yeah. I'll go," Jen replied. Almost instantaneously, spare a few stutters. Kate nodded, and said, "Your opinion in the situation doesn't really matter. I already packed your things, and we're leaving in about an hour, after everything is in the trailer." Jen was in shock. Was this really the same cheerful, warm girl who had helped her to the toilet the same day? More importantly, is this how she herself had acted towards everyone, with the same cold, demanding demeanor? Jen walked through the house, feeling like a ghost, thinking back on how difficult life must have been on everyone around her, due to her own selfishness. She was ready to give anything to make up for how mean she had been. Jen noticed that everything was gone, and she heard Kate yell, "We're leaving, come on." So she slowly walked out to the van, got in the front seat, and reclined the back of the seat. Neither Jen nor Kate had spoken for at least an hour. Riding with only the sound of the engine and the rushing of wind on the windows to break the silence. "What about my bike?" asked Jen. Wide-eyed, kicking her feet together, bored. "I sold it," replied Kate. "Just as cold as she was a few hours ago." "So, we're going to my old house?" Jen asked, feeling her newfound sensitivity coursing through her body. "Yes." "Go to sleep," Kate commanded. Jen had a hard time resisting. So much so that she laid down her head and rested her eyes. Unable, and unwilling, to do anything that would make Kate unhappy. She had put her through enough. Jen was slowly drifting in and out, seeing worn out small town buildings and large city highways. But she paid no mind to them. She just cared about sleeping as Kate wanted her to. Jen jumped as she heard the driver's side door slam. She looked up through the windshield and saw something extremely familiar. The siding of her childhood home. After she had the chance to rub her eyes, she saw her aunt handing the keys to Kate. She heard her aunt say something about the little something. After Kate and Jen's aunt had a discussion, Jen saw her aunt step off the front patio, and she watched as she left in her grey BMW. Jen looked up to the patio again and saw Kate walking into the house, almost completely disregarding her. Jen quickly hopped out of the front seat of the car, crossed the yard, and worked her way up the steps to the front door. Stepping into the house was like taking a step into the past itself. The house had not changed very much at all since she had left when she turned 18. She heard a drawer sliding down the hall, so she went into the room to investigate. She saw her parents' master bedroom being inhabited by Kate. She couldn't object, although she had several strong feelings against this. Kate said, "Just wait there. Remember those conditions I told you about?" Jen nodded, complacently. "Well, I'll tell you about them as soon as I'm done unpacking." "Sit on the bed and wait," Kate commanded. Jen complied and sat on the bed. Feeling minuscule, being towered over by someone who had once been emotionally neglected by herself. The final drawer had closed, and Kate was humming. She stood up and looked down at Jen. Jen never realized how much taller Kate was. Jen opened her mouth to speak. "So." "Shush," Kate said as she looked down at Jen. She then proceeded to walk out of the room and ordered Jen to follow her. Jen trotted after Kate, as she realized they were heading towards the bathroom. After they entered the bathroom, Kate stared down at Jen and ordered to remove her garments. Jen removed all of her clothes, down to her boxers. At which point Kate laughed and said, "I mean all the way." After which, Kate proceeded to pull down the boxers and easily placed Jen in the bathtub. Kate turned the water on and the tub filled with lukewarm water. Jen just sat, looking up at Kate, confused. Jen attempted to speak again. "What? Remember what I said?" Kate demanded an answer. "Yes." Jen complied again. Jen just looked down at her toes, which were buried under bathwater. After several minutes, Kate demanded she get out, which she did. She just stood there as Kate looked at her. Kate then turned around and opened a drawer in the bathroom counter. She pulled out a razor. Jen was petrified. Kate then proceeded to shave every hair. After about 15 minutes, Jen finally gathered the courage to look down and saw her body as it looked when she was in 4th grade. Smooth as a baby's bottom. Kate made some remark about how cute Jen looked now and walked out of the bathroom. Jen bent over to grab her boxers to get dressed again. And to her horror, she saw all of her clothes gone. She was instantly petrified. She attempted to look around for something to wear. To no avail. She stood in the bathroom for what seemed like an eternity until Kate came back with a pill and a glass of water. She demanded that Jen take it, with which she begrudgingly obliged. Soon afterwards, she felt dizzy. She noticed her vision start to blur as she fell forward into Kate's arms and into darkness. Kate easily carried Jen into the master bedroom, placed her on the bed, and walked out. Kate walked towards the front door as she heard the doorbell ring. She opened the door and was greeted by several of Jen's aunt's friends. They helped her move everything into place and even a few extra things that were picked up while Jen was napping on the way there. After everything had been moved into Kate and Jen's new home, Kate paid her helpers, and they left. She then strode back into the master bedroom to see Jen still sleeping in the same position she had left her. Kate slowly lifted Jen and carried her into a room around the corner from the master bedroom. Jen's eyes slowly opened. She felt her legs gently moving about as she noticed Kate was carrying her. He felt herself being put down, but couldn't fully see. For some reason, her eyes were blurry. All she could see was a very pastel-looking pink color. She tried to move but found that whenever she would try, she would almost always randomly flail. Kate noticed Jen's attempt at moving and told her that the pill Jen had taken was a muscle relaxant, as well as a sleeping drug. Jen tried to speak back but found that all that came out was a slurred mess of random sounds and noises. Jen realized the hopelessness of the situation and began to regret it. Kate had just turned around from setting down something when she saw a tear roll down Jen's face. "Don't you worry your pretty little head," Kate said, as she slowly stroked Jen's long, curly, brown hair. "I'll be sure to take good care of you." "How couldn't I, when you're so cute?" Kate quickly proclaimed. Jen tried to retort, but all that came out again was a mangled mess. Jen felt a little bit of drool beginning to gather and fall from her bottom lip as she attempted to speak. Suddenly, she noticed something. The walls were so wonderful. The shade. It was intoxicating. She couldn't make out any details due to the blurriness of her eyes. But she didn't care. She couldn't help but crane her neck and start looking around the room, wide-eyed, as she took in the wall's flawless color. Kate noticed this as well and giggled a little bit. Kate then suddenly held up a hand. "I almost forgot," she excitedly stated. She hurriedly ran from the room, as Jen grew worried. What would she do if she needed anything? If she had to move for any reason? What would she do if she grew hungry? None of these concerns was of any importance as, even in her blinded state, she saw Kate walk in, holding something that she was ready to fight her way out of. Jen attempted to struggle, but was only able to slightly flail her arms and legs as she let out a cry, with tears streaming down her face. She would do anything but this. Why would Kate make her do this? Kate was always so nice to her. She tried to yell, but it only came out as a louder wail. Jen was unable to follow exactly what was going on due to her blurred vision. Kate had never expected Jen to be so resistant to the diaper she was trying to put on her. She felt that it would be fun. Kate quickly grabbed both of Jen's ankles and held them together while she pulled them up, effectively lifting Jen's butt as well. She slowly slid the diaper under Jen and carefully lowered her legs back down, all through sobs and wails from Jen. She carefully lifted the front part of the diaper between Jen's legs and pulled up the adhesive tabs. She had trapped Jen in the diaper. Jen couldn't believe what was going on. She had just been put into a diaper. She had never wet herself. At least, not when she was sober. She had finally realized that there was nothing she could do, however, and just decided to calm down a bit. Kate slowly picked up Jen and began cradling her and rocking her, just like a baby. Kate was telling Jen how good she was for being a good baby and letting her put the diaper on her cute little bottom. Kate was telling her how she was going to get a special present for lunch today too. Kate then proceeded to lay her diapered, but otherwise naked baby on her back, while she walked into the closet and pulled out a Onesi. She walked over to Jen and lifted her arms through the bottom of the Onesi, while she slid it down over her head. She then pulled her head through the hole at the top and snapped the buttons in the crotch. Kate then walked over to the dresser and pulled out what Jen saw only as a pastel pink blur, much like the walls. Kate pulled the pants up over the baby's legs and positioned them right on her hips. Jen looked up at what she believed to be Kate's face and proceeded to babble. Kate said, "I know, baby, I know. I have cuter clothes for you that I'll be giving to you in a bit. I didn't think I should give my widdle baby Wumpikins anything that she'd get dirty when I give her breakfast." Jen attempted to liberate herself from Kate's hold by moving, but she only squirmed around a little bit, still lacking muscular control. Kate was carrying Jen. She was taking Jen to the kitchen so she could feed her some food. She realized that Jen hadn't eaten since they had left. Kate looked at Jen as she carried her and bounced her up and down a few times. Jen giggled immensely, which was nothing but the opposite of what was going on inside her head. She was panicking. She had realized that she was unable to comprehend what she was seeing, unable to speak, unable to control her body, and apparently, also unable to fully control her mind. It was as though she was being controlled by impulse, forced to do things by her subconscious. Kate entered the kitchen with Jen and put Jen into an oversized high chair that she had asked Jen's aunt to buy before they had moved. Jen felt herself being restrained in the chair but just pouted. She realized that there was nothing she could do to control herself. All of a sudden Jen cried. Kate suddenly moved over by her. Jen realized that instant that this was how she could communicate. She could escape if she could just cry enough. So she cried louder and louder. Kate walked over to Jen and made coos and sweet noises at Jen to calm her down. She prepared a bottle and got some baby food out from the cabinet. Jen stopped crying, as Kate noticed her looking at her chest. She realized then that she should mentally regress Jen as far back as she could. So she scrapped the idea of giving her a bottle and mushy icky food and undid the high chair. She lifted Jen out of the chair slowly, so as not to upset her anymore, and carried her to the living room. As she softly hummed a song, Jen was enthralled with Kate. She couldn't stop thinking about her. How nice she was. How much Jen loved her. How sad and afraid she felt to be away from her for any more than an instant. As she walked over to a chair, Kate saw something on the floor but disregarded it, mentally noting to pick it up later. She sat down on a rocking chair as she laid Jen across her lap. She slowly raised Jen to her chest and closed her eyes. Jen was confused. She wondered why she felt the way she did, and she wondered what was going on. She felt perplexed by her sudden ecstasy at being so close to Kate. She suddenly realized what was going on. Jen noticed that she couldn't think any complex thoughts right now. She was just feeling things. Feeling happy. Feeling sad. Feeling confused. But feeling content all the while. As long as she was by Kate. Jen didn't feel as though she would ever be afraid. Kate felt a very odd sensation. It was a very odd mix between pleasure and pain. Albeit a bit more pleasure than pain. Physically it felt rather odd. Although, she felt so fulfilled emotionally. She felt like she was providing for someone who needed her. She felt like a mother, and she felt very much like she never wanted to let this girl out of her sight. Kate looked down at Jen to see that she was asleep, with her mouth still resting open on Kate's chest. Kate carefully repositioned Jen and proceeded to slowly lift Jen and herself up, off of the chair. She looked down at the object that she had kicked earlier, and found a pacifier. One of the movers must have dropped it out of something as they moved things in. She bent over, very slightly, to be able to reach the pacifier, and stuck it in Jen's mouth. She stroked Jen's soft locks as Jen began to suck on the pacifier and turn her head in content slumber. Kate walked to Jen's nursery and set her down on a diaper-changing table. She carefully took the pink sweatpants off of Jen, that she had put on earlier, and proceeded to carefully put Jen inside of her crib. She lifted a pastel, multicolored quilt over Jen, and tucked it under her. As Kate walked out of the nursery, she heard a soft mumbling behind her. She turned around, smiled, and walked out.